We're going to call the meeting back to order. We have a 1 o'clock appointment to hear from the public who've been affected by the decision to discontinue funding for our libraries. I would just like to remind everybody, sorry? Portion of the funding. Yes, but that's not to our libraries. I just wanted to remind everybody we do have a procedural bylaw in place that does just require respectful behavior in council chambers. I'm not overly concerned about that with our group today, but just because of our numbers, I did want to remind everybody of that. Everybody will be welcome to speak. I would ask you to be kind of as concise as possible and try not to repeat information. So if information has been provided, if you have a different perspective, we want to hear it, but we'll try to keep information from being too repetitive. I'd also ask, there's a few seats here in the front. If any of our kind of really mobile children wouldn't mind, maybe if they're willing to give up their seats for any more senior people or people with mobility issues or that kind of thing, that would be super. So the microphone is here. We'll just hit that button. When you're going to address council, if you can just state your name for the record, and we're welcome to hear from anybody who would like to speak. Would anybody like to address council?
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you this afternoon. My name is Grace Potker, and I'm the chairman of the board for the Carsland Library, community library there. And to be brief, I'll just read a short letter that I would like council to address. It is of great concern that we have lost our library funding due to a tie vote at the April 16th, 2019 Wheatland Council meeting. As a rural county library, we count on this funding to keep our library operational. Last week, I did submit a copy of our 2018 annual report to Mr. Brian Henderson. In this report, I've highlighted numbers showing the thousands of books our library handles each year. I also submitted a sign-in sheets showing the number of patrons that visited our library between May 2nd and May 14th. During that time period, our library was only open 34 hours, but we had more than 100 visitors come through our doors. Our library not only sees a lot of book traffic, but we also provide other services as well. These services include access to computers, fax machines, copiers, reference materials, and children's programs. We also provide a coffee time 3 mornings a week. You're invited to come join us. And that fosters library use, but also just good for community building. We feel this is very important to a small community. After viewing the council meeting on April 16th, 2019, I would suggest that any council member that has not visited a library in the county would do so. I am grateful that our councillor of Division 3 has visited our library on numerous occasions and couldn't help but notice the support in the vote for continuing the funding. So I'm asking for your reconsideration of this matter because it is vital to keeping our library going. So thank you for your support in the past, and we would just ask you to reconsider continuing to support us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? Thank you. I was told to ask one question. What do you charge for a membership of your library?
We do not charge for memberships, as we feel that that is part of community enrichment and recreation. Just like you wouldn't charge for a child to use a park in Carsland, we also do not charge to use a library because it's definitely part of community enrichment and enhancement.
Thank you.
My name is Gary Billings. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the Rockyford Library. Some of you may know I'm also Rockyford's representative, a board member to Marigold, and I'm also the Marigold treasurer. So sometimes it might sound like I'm speaking on behalf of Marigold, but it's really Rockyford funding that I'm talking about today. I have a hopefully brief PowerPoint that is supposed to magically connect. Yes, okay. Okay. Lindsay, do I press it again? Okay. Okay, the Rockyford Library, what do we do and how do we pay for it? I chose to put a picture from last year's drama camp on the front page because, as the previous speaker mentioned, our libraries are involved with a lot of things in our community. Or to put it another way, we're not your grandmother's library. When I moved to Rockyford from Calgary, where I'd lived much of my grown-up life, I thought, gee, little one-room library, it's going to have some dusty old books. How much can there be there? Well, what a surprise. We do lending of books that are from our shelves, but we do so much more. So I'm going to talk about what we do and how it's paid for in terms of budget and so on. Okay. Even the business of lending has changed dramatically. We do lend books, good old physical books, and we've all heard so much over recent years about how e-books are going to be the death of paper books. That's turned out not to be the case. Even publishers have found that. I think partly it's because they charge so much for e-books, but regardless, the e-book business, or the physical book business is doing great. I think it's rejuvenated the mail order industry with Amazon and Chapters and so on, but we still lend books. We also lend e-books and e-audiobooks and downloadable music. So if you do like to read on your smartphone or your iPad or whatever, with your library card, you can borrow books for those media. It's all included in the cost of your library card, which may be free in most places. I know people who commute. One friend of mine commutes from Linden into Calgary. He downloads audiobooks to listen while he's driving. Another fellow who drives for a grain hauling company, he downloads music to listen to by way of his library card. And we also lend audiobooks on CDs. And for people in rural communities, even now, we have much better internet penetration than we used to, but some people still don't have very good internet connections. We lend movies and TV series on DVDs. I like going online to BBC and get lists of the best movies of 2018, and some of them are really obscure movies. Guess what? I can order them up on DVD through the library and look at them. We also have online resources, top quality online courses, reference material. Some of these you have to go to the library for. Some you can access from home with your library card. So we still do lending, but even the lending part of our business has changed dramatically. We're meeting new technology as part of doing the traditional lending business. But there's a lot of things we do besides all these different types of lending. As previously mentioned, we have free internet access and access to computers and a printer. Now, most of us have these things at home. Some people don't. It's by no means every day or every week, but occasionally we have somebody come in who's out of work, needs to make a resume. We're the place. We'll print it for him, probably help him with the computer as well. If a person comes in with a computer problem, it's not our core business, but we'll help them with that too. Newcomers to communities, Jocelyn Kisco, our library manager, I know she just sent a couple of you a letter over the weekend outlining how when she and her husband moved to Rockyford 20 years ago, the library, thanks to our librarian at the time, Francis, who's here today, the library was a big part of how they got introduced to the community. Same with me when I moved here 12 years ago. The library was key to getting to know people in town. So I could tell other anecdotes, but I'll stop. A big part of what we do is programs for kids, from toddlers to teenagers. And it's not so much what they might learn in that program or event. It's the experience of doing it with other kids, the socialization, the stimulating experiences that they might not have otherwise had, and the opportunities for their caregivers to bring their kids to the library and meet other people in the community who are in the same stage of their life. So it's all these soft things that we do. We also have programs and events for adults. Some they have high attendance, some it's just a couple of people that we're just using the library as a place to meet that's socially neutral, doesn't cost any money. It's a way for people to meet each other. This is an infographic that Marigold prepared from our stats for last year. I think you've all been presented with this some time ago. A lot of statistics here about usage of the library and so on, but I'm just going to focus on a couple. Getting back to that little one-room library that can't possibly have anything in it for me. Well, when I go online to our library catalog that we get by way of our membership in Marigold, there's 3.3 million items in that library catalog. And if what you want isn't there, you can actually reach out further. A couple of years ago, I borrowed a really obscure German textbook from the off-site archives of U of A through our local library, ordered it up online, it shows up, no cost. I know that Marigold also brings things in from other provinces on a routine basis for people at other libraries in the Marigold system. So a depth of resources that is surprising for people who live in small communities. I mean, who'd have thought that at a village library of 325 people that I can access 3.3 million items and they'll show up within a week or two. Down at the bottom, there were some statistics that relate to these programs that I've referred to. And they're divided up in ways, partly, they're not divided up the way I would have done it. For example, the drama camp counts as a family event, mostly because the range of ages of the kids at the drama camp is quite large. But things like the spring art camp, how-to computer courses that are run by the Wheatland Further Education Society, but we provide a venue, a local venue for them. A book club that's been running for donkey's years, as they say, I don't know how long. Again, very little actual cost, but it's a common ground meeting place for people in our community. We have a little photography group. We have paint nights where we bring in an artist who will guide people through creating a painting. And it's amazing what you can actually paint. Now, this isn't museum grade stuff, but it's a fun evening event with other people in your community that you may never have met before. The drama camp is a really big one. We're very proud of that. That's for kids 6 to 16 or something, an age range like that, and so on. So it's a lot of these other programs that are so important as what we do as a library. Just to recap, some of the programs, we're providing the venue, and another group with other funding is actually executing the program at our location. For others, again, the drama camp is the flagship. Thanks to funding from Wheatland FCSS, we bring in the Calgary Young Persons Theatre to run the same drama camp as they run for kids in Calgary. That's pretty exciting, that kids in Rockyford can have the same experience as they'd get by their parents, paying a lot more and having to shuttle them into Calgary. So the library is the vehicle to do all these different things. And we look at the participation rate of these things. Some, if it's just a couple of people, but it didn't cost anything, we'll do it again. If it did cost money and we didn't have good participation, well, then we'll change the program for next year. Okay. What it all costs and how do we pay for it? Fees are part of it. We're very aware of the fact that many people in our community, if we want something that we would ordinarily borrow from a library, we're in the happy position we could just buy it. But not everybody can. Some people, even the small fees we were charging for library cards were a barrier. So for that reason, we keep our library card fees at zero. And the programs that we run are at the lowest possible cost. They're often subsidized because we got that grant funding from WFCSS. And the reason for that is we truly want it to be accessible to everyone. And even though it's only a small portion of our population who are with the least ability to pay, those are the people for whom it's probably the greatest benefit. So that's what guides our thinking and why we subsidize these programs and so on. And a lot of it comes down to this principle that the more that people in our community are connected, the healthier they are, both in terms of physical health, mental health, social feeling of well-being, and so on. I think the buzzword is resilience, but we see ourselves as part of that, even though at first blush we sound like a bunch of people that just lend books. Okay, this is a sort of a cartoon version of our budget from last year. This is where our funding came from. And going around the clock, a provincial operating grant of $6,600 is about a quarter of our budget. We get about $3,100 from Marigold. The Wheatland grant was about $2,000. Village of Rockyford about $4,000. And the biggest piece of the pie is fundraising and donations, which I think is very significant because that's people voting with their checkbook or literally with their sweat flipping pancakes over the grill at the rodeo for the rodeo breakfast morning. We get a $1,000 donation every year from Ember Resources, which we appreciate. But that fundraising and donation slice is quite significant. I've deliberately labeled this the operating funding because this is what it takes to have the library open. We got a grant last year of $9,350 from WFCSS. That money cannot be used for the running of the library. It can only be used for running programs that are compatible with WFCSS's mission. And we have to file reports with them and do evaluations per their specifications and so on. So I haven't included it here because, as I say, it's not for the actual running of the library, although the library is the platform for delivering those programs. Okay, now how did we spend that money? Turns out there's really very little flexibility. 3/4 of the money goes for salaries and expenses, and be assured it's no grand salary we're paying. We're above minimum wage, but it's not much. So working in a small community library is really a calling, not so much as a great career. We actually have to pay money back to Marigold. As you may know, the Marigold funding model is complicated. We do get a net cash contribution from Marigold, and hugely, I can't state this strongly enough, we get a huge amount of services and physical stuff from Marigold that doesn't show up here because it's not financial. We get $1,000 worth of computer equipment every year. We get IT support. We get internet connectivity and management of a network of computers that are kept to current specifications. That requires IT professionals, and we get that through Marigold. They do the acquisition of books for us, putting them into the catalog. That catalog with 3.3 million items in it, they maintain that catalog. When we order the books, they deliver them to us and pick them up when we're done. So Marigold is not really shown on this slide, but it's a huge chunk of what it takes to run our library. And the rest of the items there are small and really non-flexible. So as you can see, most of our cost is our fairly minimal salaries. Okay, this slide is very interesting. I didn't realize this information until I got this information from Marigold just last week. But at the Rockyford Library, 53% of our card holders are Rockyford residents. 42% are from rural Wheatland County, and a few others from other places. Interestingly, this high proportion of non-village participants is reflected on our library board too. In fact, until recently, I think our library board was 100% rural members, except for the village council member of our board. So that's a brief picture of what our library does, what it costs, where the money comes from, and I'll just end with the one slide, which is why we're here today. We're hoping that you will restore the funding for rural libraries, which in the case of Rockyford, because we're in a village and we have a grant from the village, the contribution from Wheatland was just the per card holder grant, which amounted to about $2,000. But that is significant in a budget of $30,000. And we're already fundraising like crazy, and we're supported by local community groups like the Ladies Gala, which gives us $2,500 to $4,000 each year. The Rockyford Lions, who support us in financial and non-financial ways, and so on. So that's where I'll leave it, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Billings? Thank you. We appreciate the information.
I just wanted to state, according to our documents, we had 79 county residents for Rockyford, and the total was 1,185. So when you're saying 2,000, that's what we have here.
I don't have that same document.
There's no base grant. That was just card holder only.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, that was there's no base grant, but it was 79 card holders. I'm looking at right.
The base grant's only for libraries in our municipality.
That's right. But just so that for clarification, it was 1,185 is what we have in front of us.
Okay, could you give me the final number there again? Is it 79 out of 185?
So the county card holders that we have here for our information was 79 that Wheatland County residents use Rockyford Library, and it was total to $1,185.
The numbers will vary just slightly because I believe, and Marigold might be able to clarify, but I believe these are based on 2017 numbers, and Marigold has just recently compiled 2018, and our number of cardholders has increased.
That's the information that was in front of us. I just want that to be clear. So.
Okay, thank you.
The new, I know the new numbers were, I forwarded this email, so Michelle Toombs had sent information documenting that the number of cardholders who identified Wheatland County as their residents is now at 1,973 as of May 1st, 2019. So.
That would be for the total across all.
Yeah, I'm just saying your numbers might not be precisely what we have because
Absolutely.
I think this RFD was prepared using previous numbers.
Yes, and if this was my numbers I believe are 2018 and yours are 2017, it does fluctuate from year to year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the Council. I'm from the Gleason Library Board, and my name is Linda Holt. I don't need to add too much extra to what our library does. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for sharing that. We have the same services in Gleason that they have in Rockyford. We're a very small library. We're 139 years old, and we really want to continue. But unfortunately, when we got this letter, this 2-sentence letter 2 weeks ago, we were absolutely heartbroken because we don't actually have wages to pay our librarian next month. The budget that you received from us in the document that Dr. Sandra Burke presented to you last November actually had our projected budget, and we really needed the county fund. We don't have a municipal center to fund us, so we don't have a base grant. So we're fundraising like crazy. Some of you helped us out last week in fundraising and improving our library building, which you generously have worked with us. The county's really supported us over the past and provided us a place, and you've sent people down to analyze it, and we've replaced the lights, and we've replaced with our own money the heating, and we were going to use ongoing grants to continue doing this. So we're really hoping to have this vote turned around. Our library is needed in our community essentially as a learning center. We don't have a school anymore. We have no access for children to get books in the summer, during holidays, and as you know, that 2 or 3 months without reading, their growth can actually go backwards by 2 or 3 years. Children can listen to books free at our place, and with the resource Solera, it's a homework help that I know a number of tutors who use. This is available free online for children. We have many children that come to our library and stay for hours. Our library is needed for research, for proctoring exams, for computer work. Some of our patrons don't have home computers. Interlibrary loans, of course, are absolutely essential. Studies in our town, it helps. I'm taking a course. I can bring in materials that aren't available to purchase. I can get them from libraries in Edmonton. I can get them from Ontario. My husband's got resources from Australia. There's nothing our library can't bring in for us if we need it. And they can be out of print pieces. I can do research documents. Research documents online without having to drive to the university. Everything's available. When you're waiting for a meeting to start, you can read the newspaper because all our newspapers are online. These things are available for a $10 membership or $15 if you're a family. We have auto repair guides. We've got manuals for people in town to use. We've got 98 languages you can learn. You can take courses in small business. This is an essential service in our community. We have a wonderful library, a beautiful building, and I hope your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Holt.
Any questions?
Any questions? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Reverend Link, or Reeve Link. County Councillors, my name is Margaret Newton, and I am honored to speak to you today. What I want to speak to you about is based on 64 years of working in libraries. I have spent my whole life in public libraries, so I know how valuable a service this is. But what I want to say to you today is I want you to think about individuals. I'm speaking selfishly here. I want my library. I need my library. What happens when I can no longer drive? You know, that's a real possibility. That's something when you hit 70, that's smack in your face. You know, we don't have forever. And I want to learn. I want to read. I want to enjoy all the things that are available to me. But I also want to speak to you about individuals in your communities, in my community and in your communities, that don't have the advantages that I have. I'm very privileged. I'm very privileged. I have a computer at home. I have more or less fast speed internet. And I know how to search. And I know the valuable sites to go to. But there's a lot of people out there who don't have that kind of access. And they don't know how to make a judgment call. are making very difficult decisions for us in Wheatland County, and all of us here acknowledge that it's not easy. In some ways, you are Solomon because you have to make a decision. You have to speak to people who are as passionate as I am all the time, and people who believe in different things that are important for our community. But I can say to you, I have the experience that can say to you without a word of a lie that libraries change people's lives, and you need to understand that. I know that you're restrained by money. We all get that. Anyone who's on a fixed income after you retire certainly understands that some days it's a choice between A and B, and it has to be A because that's the most important thing. So we understand that, and we will abide by your decision, and we will support you, each one of you. But I want you to understand in your hearts how important this service is, and it's not, you see children here. Children are the most valuable thing that we have in our communities. We don't have a school anymore. Mrs. Holt is exactly right. We don't have a school. But we want a place where children can feel safe to come and to talk to people and to make friendships and to lose themselves in a good book. And selfishly, I want to be able to get books that are going to help me as I take further education. And if I lose interlibrary loan, or if I don't have a library close to me, you know, I'm the type of person who's going to go. I mean, there's no question, I will go to the nearest next community. But is that fair to that next community? Because I'm an extra person that they have to serve. You do a great service when you keep things in rural communities active. And we're very proud of our library. And it's a joy to drive down the main street and see that building and know that that building is there and has been there for those many years, and that there's been a library in our community. That's amazing. Alberta is a new country, is it not? A new province. To have something that has been so long in a community, and I know that you have to make a decision, and I'll be honest, I've been praying, and I've been praying that you would see it in perhaps a different light. And I hope that the people who speak to you today will help you in this very difficult decision. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Would you guys mind if each of you introduced yourselves to council?
We sure
Do they
could.
mind? Wonderful.
And good afternoon to all of you on council. I'll let the kids say their names. And I'm Beth Anna Van Dellen. I live about 15 minutes up the road here towards Standard and Hussar. And so I'm here to present a petition from members of Wheatland County, and I'll pass that on to you. And maybe while I'm doing that, the kids can say their name, and if you want to, you can say one thing you love about our libraries. Would that be good?
I am Amaral Van Dellen, and I think that libraries matter. I love the books that they have.
Good job. Okay, come stand over here. Right there. Who else would like to go? I'm not crying.
I'm Hudson Van Dellen, and about 2 weeks ago, I went to the library, and I got a book about airplanes. I really like airplanes. So and I'm using it to draw airplanes. It's a remarkable thing to go to libraries and find the things you need. And even if it's not there in the library, all you need to do is to ask the librarian, and then it'll be shipped right to your library. But if someone's using it, it'll come straight to you or to that library when they are done with it.
And I have to say, this young man waited 3 months, I think, for a certain video game. Very patiently waited. But you can get them through the library because of the interlibrary loans. And so he might keep it a while, Adrina.
My name is Carson Fraser, and I think that libraries are the best.
You don't have to. You can just show your sign or just wave if you want. Do you want to say your name? Oh, this is Lincoln, Carson's brother.
Welcome, Lincoln.
And this is my daughter, Avelina. Thank you, guys. Do you want to say
Welcome, Avelina.
Okay. Okay, and unlike the lady who just spoke, I have not worked in a library for as many years. That was a wonderful record. Thank you to all of our librarians. They're amazing, and we rely on them so often to pull in great things. I use the library a lot myself because there's a lot of curriculum things sometimes that I need, and I can get them without having to pay $100 per textbook, and they come in from all over the province. But as I said, unlike the previous lady, I don't have experience working in a library. I do, however, have quite a bit of experience in community development. And I know a lot about the value of libraries as a teacher because I spent some of my life in education. But for the past 3 years, I was also working in municipal community development. And when you have an opportunity like this, when you have vibrant libraries doing so much with so little, and really, you know, we find funds for a lot of things, but when these libraries do all these great things and you have a chance to build into your community and into people, sometimes it doesn't look like as practical of a use of funding, but I've sat in meetings where they've discussed, you know, how do we bring down crime rates? How do we do, how do we connect people in our communities? And more, that's what research is showing. One of the programs we were doing just a couple of years ago, we were doing block party programs and things like these, and investing into community programs like libraries. And why? Well, it came out of RCMP work. They were studying how do we build thriving communities. And this is how we do it. This is a small part of how we do it. So I just like to read the text for the petition that I passed to you just now. We respectfully ask that Wheatland County reverse its decision to no longer provide operational funding to the libraries in its county. These libraries are deeply valued by tax-paying members of these communities, and I think you can see that today. They provide a window to the world for children and adults and seniors who might otherwise not be able to travel to or afford these opportunities. They're often the heart of the community, and especially in some of our communities that don't have local schools anymore. And they are the provider of social programming. Libraries develop early literacy, and they are historically a foundational pillar of free, educated, democratic societies. A county that does not value literacy and community engagement does a disservice to its members and is not attractive to new residents. The decision to cut this funding is short-sighted, detrimental to our communities and our democracy. It does not further council's desire to further develop this county and have thriving communities within it. It is a step in the wrong direction and a threat to the social fabric of our small communities. We love our libraries. Please reverse this decision and restore the funding. And I was looking through the petition because I left it open this morning. It was still kind of rolling. And this was in 2 weeks that we had people putting their names on. And there were a few random ones, I think, that must have, you know, got shared to Toronto or something. But as I looked through the name after name after name, and I thought of my husband, he gets audio stuff and listens to it in the car as he commutes, because it's a commute if you live out here. And I thought of, different people's names are on there, but that name would represent our family. So when you look at the number of names on there, each one of those people is likely a family. And when, there was some discussion about, how many people really use the library? Well, more than just hold the cards. Sometimes the person holding the card is bringing a book back to their grandparent because they don't travel anymore. So the numbers are likely much, much bigger. Like this is like a ripple effect. When you when you go with your dad or your grandpa and you throw a stone in the water and you're skipping stones and you see the ripples, right? When you're talking about community development, this is a ripple effect. And we're either moving forward and being progressive, or we're doing nothing and we're paving our roads, and that's great, but that can be a step backward. And I guess that would be my challenge to the council today, is what kind of county do we want to be? Because where we invest our time and our money is going to determine who we're going to be.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one quick question, sorry, I forgot. What was your last count for number of signatures? I know I looked this morning, but
I have 218.
wonderful, thank you. If it could go back this way, they haven't seen it that way. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Brianne Gordelik. I live in Speargrass, and yesterday I went out and collected 52 signatures from residents of Speargrass. We don't live in Carsland, but we all love the library there. So if I can maybe pass this on after. I'm sure you guys all got my lovely letter last night, and I won't read it all, but there are a couple important points that I'd like to reiterate. My background is I'm a biologist, so I like facts. I don't think I can beat the kids coming before me, so I have a few facts I'd like to lay out for everyone. The Conference Board of Canada states that 48% of Canadians have inadequate literacy skills. And what does that mean? That means people have issues in their jobs. They can't adapt to change. They can't follow instructions. Alberta, as a province, gets a C grade in literacy for adults. And that's not the best. We're actually one of the better provinces, but C grade I think we can work on. So poor literacy skills hurt an individual's chance for getting a job in the first place. They actually increase the risk of health and safety incidents in the workplace. And this is because they can't follow proper SOPs. They can't follow instructions. Lack of literacy skills also have health consequences, such as poor overall health and increased social isolations. So libraries are a vital part of creating and maintaining literacy skills in people of all ages. Now, I'm lucky that I'm able to actually purchase books when I want. I do love using libraries. I've been a lifelong user. And I also have a computer with really fast internet access. Children from low-income households, they have limited opportunities within their home for improving their reading ability. And this was mentioned before, especially over the summer. These are the children who are already at risk for academic failure. And so the health of all of Wheatland County, especially the children, is why I would request that the funding be restored to the libraries. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk.
Thank you, and thank you for your letter. Would anybody else like to speak to council? Mr. Holt?
Good afternoon. I'd like to just speak to, I think, what is the major issue here, and that's money. And as you well know, the hamlet of Gleason has been going downhill for quite some time. If you look at any real estate listings or such, you'll notice that the types of things that are added in there, they want to say, how close are you to a school? What are the other types of activities or things that you may have in a community? Well, in Gleason, we have very few. I think I would like to thank you for contributing up to $2 million, I believe it is, for the the skating rink, and you've put in some new playground equipment. But if we want the community to develop, to become something more than what it is now, and I believe we are a growth node, we have to have ways to encourage people to come. And that means we have to have other facilities other than simply those which are best for younger people, such as skating rinks, or very young people, such as the playgrounds. Now, what it basically means is that our property values have been decreasing dramatically. When we lost our school, property values went down. I've been keeping track of it. When our store suffered greatly with the closure of the school. So we have to ask ourselves exactly what is it we can do, not simply to save money here for the county, but to actually develop in these communities. And I suppose really the only thing we have at this point then, other than sort of a few athletic things, is the library. And we're looking at a whole new paradigm for community development. That, yes, we are an agricultural community at this point, but we are building and becoming much, much larger in terms of our urban communities. I, for one, think that it's about time that a bunch of us started, well, going to the assessment board and asking for our buildings to be reassessed. Because essentially, the assessment has no relationship to the actual value of our homes. So that has to be considered, is growth, building, being something more than what we are right now. And if at the very least, if it means maintaining a stable library, which could very well go under if we don't have that immediate funding. And we have all tried very hard. Goodness knows, and I think you know, that we have all been out doing things for casinos, one thing or another. I think 4 or 5 casinos in a row. Some of us have to work in order to keep things going, and we are trying. It's not that we aren't in there. And when you say, I hear the word user pay, well, we're paying to it in many ways, and that's a slippery slope. Because user pay, well, you're going to talk about toll roads next, or what? You know, that could happen. That concept, I think, is not something that we really want to get to. We want to say, what kind of value are we creating? What kind of really good community are we building? So it's very important to keep some of these things that perhaps, well, I don't play hockey, and God knows I don't curl ever since I lost it barefoot curling at one point, which was, but anyway, there are things that the rest of us need as well within the context of an urban setting. So I would really urge you to think of that very carefully and to restore the library funding, because it will build our community and it will build our tax base.
Thank you. If you could just state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Carol Elias from Village of Standard. I hadn't heard this mentioned yet. I just wanted to bring up the fact that the library is the only place in Standard and area that there's free internet. And I think that's the same case in some of the other towns. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Sovey. I live just north of Gleason, 2 or 3 generations living in that area. I was, for those that don't know, I was a councillor here in Wheatland County for 3 terms, spent 9 years here. There's 2 of the councillors that I had the honor of working with that are still here, and much appreciated. But I must say that when I was here, the issue come up, and being supported by the ratepayers in my area and throughout Wheatland County to visit the issue of a library and supporting the library and the Marigold system in the area. So we took a good long hard look at that, and it finally come to fruition that we did support the libraries. And I'll tell you, it's one of the proudest things I am of what we did while I was here. And I'd also like to say, with you guys having a look at it because of the budget. I believe, if I'm correct in my assumption here, that the budget was passed with the funding for the libraries in it, and then on a second look was when it was turned down. Is that true?
The funding is in the approved budget.
Yes, in the original budget. But I would like to say that when the time that I spent here, that we were supporting the library every year that it come up during the budget time, the look and the size of that commitment was almost something that just kind of took you back for a second. But then if you weigh the money that you put in against the benefit, and it's been voiced here by all the people that have got up and talked, I think it's money well spent, and I would hope that you would revisit the issue that you had a while ago at this council, and I was hoping that we could get that done today and have the discussion amongst the council while we have all the people that are interested in the libraries here at the meeting. So thank you very much for your time and for the work that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvan.
Hello, my name is Michelle Toombs, and I'm the CEO of the Marigold Library System. Your Worship, councillors, I would just like to provide a little bit of background about library funding and how the services for libraries work in Wheatland County. First of all, I would like to say, as I do every Wheatland County Council presentation, that we're so grateful for your support. We're grateful for your membership. We see the good that it does, and we feel that we have a very great working relationship with the county. While Marigold does not have direct influence on the issue at hand, we did not lobby for this funding initially, and we do not distribute the funding. We appreciate and encourage the funding because we see what good it does in the community. And the average per capita support for public library service in Alberta, according to the provincial government, was $38.85 in 2016, and this didn't include Calgary and Edmonton. As of May 21st, we counted 1,977, which supports what Reeve Link said by a couple of extras, and we count these as householders for the most part, because the further away you live from a library, the more likely it is that you travel together as a family and you need one card, and you use that one card for the online resources as well. So we think that 1,977 is a pretty good representation of use in the county, even though it's not close to the total number of people that live in your county. We also do an annual purge of patron records that are inactive, so we feel that it is a pretty accurate statistic. So first of all, I just wanted to review the types of services that are available in Wheatland County. First of all, there are the municipal libraries, each with an autonomous library board, including Strathmore, Rocky Ford, and Standard. And as of May 21st, there are 1,101 Wheatland County card holders and 5,109 in-town card holders. So the second category is community libraries within Wheatland County, including Carsland and Gleason. And because Wheatland County does not have a library board, Marigold is the governing board. Marigold outsources the day-to-day supervision of operations of each of these libraries to a society that is officially recognized by the Societies Act. This is a provincial requirement so that grant money can be transferred to these libraries. As of May 21st, there were 411 Wheatland County card holders for Gleason and Carsland. Wheatland has 2 of these community libraries, and Marigold supports 4 others in Foothills, Bighorn, Starland counties and special areas. And in other library systems, there are lots of community libraries as well. We call them different things. We call them library service points, we call them library outlets, and sometimes we even call them branches. The third category of service is remote book locker installation, which is at the Hussar Credit Union. And it also has a very active library board that does a lot of good work and programming in the community. The Book Locker is a really innovative kind of technology because the library closed when the school closed. The town of Hussar, the village of Hussar, wanted to have a library presence. So it acquired the funds to install these automated book lockers, which interact with the library system, and we help with the management so that people are getting their holds. And it really helps to the Hussar residents to feel like they're part of the library service that is provided in the county. The fourth type of service is the book deposit in Rosebud. And this is run by volunteers, and it's mostly paperbacks, but again, it's a presence for the library in the community. Marigold provides some of the content. We go out and we help with the house cleaning of those book deposits, and usually when we go, we see more books than what we send, because there is a lot of exchange of materials. And the final category of libraries use is the Library to You program. It's a mail service. It's been going on for decades. And it's where Marigold operates for cardholders who live some distance from a local library or they're housebound. So in other words, we manage the acquisitions of the materials that they place holds on. We put it in the mail. They get them. When they're finished, they mail them back to us. Marigold pays for the postage. And surprisingly, there are 237 cardholders in Wheatland County who use this mail service. So now I'd like to speak a bit about how revenue is generated and distributed for these libraries. And the following is a quote from the Public Library Services branch, which is part of Municipal Affairs. Public libraries are part of strong, healthy communities. Public Library Service is a municipal service in Alberta as set out by the Libraries Act. In order to encourage accessibility, the Libraries Act sets out conditions of free basic public library use service. So that includes free access to public library facilities, use of library resources in the library, borrowing public library resources, acquiring library resources through interlibrary loan, consultation with library staff, and basic information service. So in other words, even if we thought it was a good idea for a user pay system, we would be prevented from doing so pretty much by the Libraries Act. Programs also bring people together, and that is encouraged for the most part to be a free service as well. So most of our preschool story times are free. By the way, preschool literacy and school preparedness is an important niche that public libraries fill. Studies have shown that more children that are exposed to reading and are prepared for school, the better they will do as adults with regard to earning potential, careers, and personal fulfillment. Public libraries in Alberta can charge a registration processing fee for library memberships and annual renewals. And many libraries in Wheatland County are doing that or have done that. Alberta libraries are unique in North America in that they are the only ones, except for a couple of libraries in Quebec, that charge for library cards. This is, however, considered by many to be a barrier to equitable access to information, and most libraries in Alberta have dropped the library card fee. So when very little money can be raised by user fees, and fundraising has its limitations, given the small staff sizes and resources available for fundraising activities, where do public libraries get their revenue? Well, there are two main sources: municipal allocations and provincial grants. To be eligible for a provincial grant, the municipality must provide a local allocation of at least $2 per capita, and if there is a population of 3,000 or more, it has to be a minimum of $3.52 per capita. This is not a difficulty for most of our libraries. They're well above that, although it's a bigger struggle for small towns and villages than for larger communities to set up on local appropriation. As these are the two main stable parts of the library budget, you can imagine that overall budgets, especially for the villages, are not very large. This is especially true for the community libraries in that they are not eligible for provincial funding directly. But what Marigold does is it sets aside the $6,660 from our operating grant to give to our community libraries. So in total, what we're giving to Carsland and Gleason is just under $10,000. But that's a major source of important revenue for them because there are limitations in how they can use their money that they get through fundraising for various things. And this money that we give them is very important for staffing, but doesn't cover the whole staffing amount for sure. The Carsland and Gleason budgets are at the bottom of Marigold's library budgets. Carsland with a budget of about $22,000 a year, and Gleason, as far as we can tell from the budget information that we receive, has an annual budget of about $26,000 per year. This doesn't compare with our other community libraries, some of which, like the Bighorn Library, which is located in Exshaw, has an annual budget of $59,000. And Berry Creek, which is located in Cessford, Alberta, has a budget of about $38,000 a year. So why do community libraries, I'm really focusing on Gleason and Carsland here because they're in a very special category. They are very restricted in how they can acquire their funding. So they typically have lower budgets because they're hamlets and they're ineligible for direct funding from the province. They receive transfer payments from library systems, and this is what I was talking about when we send them about $9,750 a year, I think it is. Typically, throughout other library regions in Alberta, the funding is $5.55 per capita. We get that because Wheatland County does not have a board. We get that, Marigold gets that, and we transfer it out to our member libraries. So in Marigold's case, we received $48,733 in provincial grants for Wheatland County's population. We distributed $62,460 to the 6 libraries, which means that we were subsidizing almost $14,000 from our operating account to supplement those transfer payments. So I asked my library system colleagues about their community libraries and county support, and while I did not get the exact amount of money because the factors vary, the amount of money and the calculations that they do have different criteria, I did get a sense of how it works in other library systems. And I do have information if you're interested, but I won't go through all of the details. But it did seem like most of the counties in other parts of Alberta, particularly the Parkland region, which is north of us, the Peace region, which is in the northwest, and the Yellowhead region, which is west of Edmonton, all provide additional funding for their libraries, and especially for their community libraries. Red Deer County, in fact, is looking at their formula because they'd like to start up 2 new community libraries because their population is growing so quickly. So I think I will leave it at that because of the topic at hand, and say thank you very much for the support that you've given in the past. In 2013, when I heard that you were giving this amount of money to the libraries, I was cheering and bragging, in fact, to my colleagues about what a wonderful system was in place at Wheatland County. So thank you for your ongoing support.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Would anybody else like to speak? Nobody else from the public does. I don't know if council would rather I stand there because I'm taking my council hat off. Would you rather I? Okay. Well, I know I can't, but this is personal and it's anecdotal, so take it for what it is. I'll try my best not to cry. So our daughter had to have some blood work this week, and she doesn't eat orally, so we look for, I'm not going to cry, we look for ways to have her to have something to look forward to after difficult things like that. So we had promised her a trip to the library. She did extraordinarily well at the lab, and despite all of her recent medical traumas. And then we headed over to the Strathmore Municipal Library, where she chose some new to us books and a movie to watch. She picked out a book for her brother as well. We do have a version of this book in our home library, but this was the youth version of Astrophysics for Young People in a Hurry, and he's thoroughly enjoying that book. Our libraries have been an integral part of my life and a lifesaver for our family forever. From when I was an insatiable young girl reading every spare moment, loading my backpack so full of books every week the straps would rip, to when I had a handful of littles and endless storybooks just were not in our budget, to when we unexpectedly had a baby born with an extra chromosome in every cell of her body, and a heart so big but with only one chamber, and we needed information. Sorry. We ordered every book available about Down syndrome from the Marigold Library System. The staff that came from the libraries all over the province was taller than she was and helped us get through. Later, living in rural Alberta, we encountered challenges accessing the therapies she needed to thrive on a daily basis. So I armed myself with books about speech, gross and fine motor skills, and learned how to provide physical, occupational, and speech therapy programs at home. Sam learned sign language initially from books and videos we borrowed from our library, acquiring over 250 signs before her verbal language took off. As homeschoolers, we have loved the diverse programs offered and relied on the extensive collections we have access to through interlibrary loans. We love that no matter what we're studying or what the current passion is, we can order resources to support our learning. While we thankfully have a large home library now, we still utilize the library. We also recognize that not everybody has the privilege of funds to spend on their own home library. I see the vast programming offered at our local libraries, and I appreciate the value in them. One other example I wanted to share, and it's not from personal experience, but it's from a couple of other people I've spoken with, is our local libraries provide a vast array of programs, and one of the recent programs that they've provided was for mental health, specifically for anxiety in youth. And what I'd like to point out to council, and I appreciate our commitment to fiscal responsibility, but if we look even at the financial savings, even from what I've shared just in that a couple of anecdotal examples of what the library has provided to our family, I can guarantee that that has been an extremely fiscal responsible investment in those libraries. In terms of that mental health program, if our libraries can provide a program that could keep even one child out of an inpatient program at the Children's Hospital, you'd be paying for library service for our entire municipality for a year, probably more so. And these programs are delivered on a regular basis by all of our libraries. There's been mention about resiliency and about adverse childhood experiences. That's what the research is showing that is impacting having lifelong impacts on our children. And our libraries are perfectly poised to help with those types of issues and to help create resilient children. So, and I would have provided a lot more of this at our previous council meeting had I had any idea that there would even be a consideration for not considering this funding. To me, it's not even fathomable. We collected this money under the Community Enhancement Grant funding with a previous motion indicating that it would be going into the library reserve that had been previously established. And I had really just it was unfathomable to me that that wouldn't be continued. I'm not going to single out any specific community enhancement programs that we support, but we've all had the list circulated, and when I look at that, I see that there is impacts that come from those, but I don't think it's comparable to the return on investment that we see in this $45,765 that had been allocated within our approved budget for our library funding. So I would actually like to see council consider an increase to our library funding because I think it's been made clear the level of service that's provided and the number of ratepayers that are provided. We have, just from my rough calculation of cardholders, over 22%, and as Marigold has pointed out, there was a long time where I was the only card holder because I couldn't manage my kids having, their own cards. It wasn't manageable for knowing who had what out. So I had one card, and there would have been 5 of us using that on a regular basis. So I would like council to consider an actual increase to the funding, and at the very least to continue this funding for what to me is an integral service in our municipality. No, Well, the motion would be to increase it. It's not a motion because I hadn't decided how much I wanted to increase it. There hasn't been an increase from what I understand since the original decision in 2013. We all know that there have been increased costs. We typically look at kind of a COLA or a cost of living index when we're looking at increases within our own budgeting processes. We haven't allowed that same liberty to any of our library boards or Marigold, who is our managing board for our community libraries. So they've been, managing increasing costs without increased funding, and I think we need to look at that on an ongoing basis to make sure that the funding is sustainable.
I missed the last meeting. 2013, I believe it was, we started the CURB funding. Long before that, it was always talked about in this council and throughout the county that the Whelan County needs to support our communities, our hamlets, and our villages, in particular our hamlets. We have to support them for growth. We have to support them for settlement patterns in the county and for our roads and everything like that. So we come up with CURB funding, 0.1 mil, added on to the taxation. I've not heard one complaint about the 1 mil everyone pays on their assessment. It's thrown into what we call the CURB money. Council of the day was concerned that maybe the CURB money, if you don't know, or I'll refresh your memory, is a pot of money that we have 14 ratepayers throughout the county, 2 from each division, sit down and take applications from community groups within the county for community enhancement. Council of the day was concerned that maybe the libraries shouldn't have to compete for that money, and we set aside roughly $50,000 for the libraries to be taken off the top of this fund and distributed to the libraries yearly. The funding formula is a formula that will come up. It can be adjusted, it can be added to, but that did not preclude the libraries from participating in the process for extra money. And there are libraries out there, and I believe Standard for one, received substantial money for a new roof here a year or so ago, I think. I just forget, just going on memory.
They're working on it right now, I think.
Yeah, I heard maybe the roof is going forward, which is great. They are still able to compete, but they get that base funding from the CURB money. What is withholding the funding from them this year in no way decreases the money from any taxation. That money is still collected. That money is still in the CURB reserve sitting there until council changes that funding formula, that funding. That money is there. It's sitting there doing absolutely nothing. So I agree with Amber, that money should be distributed as per it was collected for. It was a policy. You don't have a policy, and then when it's time to pay it out, change your mind and just arbitrarily take it apart for really no reason that I heard. It's just not a thing you do. You want to stop the funding, change the policy, change the CURB thing, and that's another discussion. The Marigold. There's a lot of confusion about the Marigold, how the funding works. There's no precise formulas. And to me, I'm a science type person, I'm not a biologist, but I like to build, I like to farm. I like hard things. For me to, and correct me if I'm a little bit off base here, but for me to rationalize in my mind, it's like a service station. Every one of our ratepayers is like a person that owns a car. And they got to have their car to travel, they gotta have their car for business, pleasure, maybe it's to work. They gotta have gas and oil and everything. For the vast majority of people, they go to service stations to pick up their gas and oil. Now, the service station person is like a library. He builds a service station and he expects customers to come in to sell his product. But he doesn't make his product. He doesn't have nothing to sell. He has to go to Esso or Co-op or the Marigold and buy fuel and make deals with them so he could bring it to his store to make deals. Now, they all have different deals, they cut different things, and is that a kind of a good analogy, or, okay? It's easier for me to understand. So we fund the Marigold to provide a service, not to put a roof over top of the service. And if we don't have a roof over the service, our Marigold functionality is limited. And what good is to have a roof if we don't have anything to sell in it? They're both two in the same. It's too bad we can't combine it all. But in the same sense, if it was combined at all, people wouldn't understand what we're funding. I like to keep it this way, it's transparent, but it's imperative that everybody understands what everybody's role is in the process. So for me, I'm in favor of redoing the motion. I will put on the motion that we reconsider the funding as per the RFD. I'm not in favor of increasing it right now because I believe that is part of a policy decision on the CURB funding, and that's another discussion. That's another budget process. This money has already hasn't been collected yet until the 30th when everybody pays their taxes. That's when this money comes to fruition. But the next budget cycle, that would be definitely on the talk. So for right now, I would put a motion on the floor that we vote in favor of the RFD as presented on the April 17th meeting.
Questions or discussion?
I originally voted for this, but I have concerns, and the reason is because I come at this from a very fiscal. My job is to run this county as fiscally responsible. It's our fiduciary responsibility. Before Councillor Wilson brought this up and Quash, we had no way to question what's going on here. I look at libraries as very integral parts, and I believe we should be providing operating loans. And to me, it's no different than we providing a skating rink. We provide operating money for a skating rink, but we do not give any money to the people to use to play hockey in that skating rink or do figure skating. And I think in order for us to be fiscally responsible, and we as a council, we held the mill rate this year. We did a wonderful job. But that means that there are tough decisions that have to be made. And I think, and I can't, and I know my deal of looking at, the way I look at life is different than anybody else's, but you have to have skin in the game. So if we can provide the building for the library, I think the people that use the library have to provide something. Like, and if it's user fees, it's user fees. But we are doing our job, holding the line on the mill rate, and it's up to the people here to reach into their own pockets and help keeping those libraries going. Like, this is sort of an all or nothing thing. we have to do everything, but I think it has to be looked at that we look at an operating system, an operating loan, maybe the operating loans have to be higher. I'm not against that, but there still has to be, I don't think just because somebody says, I can't wrap my head around just saying that we're gonna give you everybody that's got a library card, we're gonna give them money. I just don't like that, but I'm all for an operating loan.
A loan?
Well, having an operating, you know, like, so right now we're supplying $18,000 worth of operating, as opposed to, and then the remainder of it comes from.
Talking about the base grant.
Yeah.
Base grant.
And then.
I think the reason they didn't do it completely based on base grant, and please, councillors that were involved at the time, please clarify if I'm incorrect, but I'm just going off my recollection when there was a large dispute about this previously, is that it was a formula whereby the funds were somewhat tied to usership. It's not giving anybody any money. It's no different than the formula. I mean, it's a different formula, but we came up with a formula for the town of Strathmore. And to say that we don't provide operational fundings for other things, we're currently in an agreement where we're paying, I believe it's 30% of the operational losses at the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Centre. And that's a significantly larger financial impact on our budget than this is. We not only held our mill rate, but we actually reduced our mill rate for all 3 tax classes. And we did that without making hard decisions on any of that. They were all relatively, I'm not going to say simple decisions. They were decisions that did not significantly impact services that we were providing. This decision, from what I have heard, will significantly impact the services that we are providing. I don't remember a single other decision that we made on the day that we reduced the budget that had any impact on services. There were reserves that haven't been used, or the word is escaping me, but like I think a reserve that was in case we needed to access funds on certain mill rates. Contingency funds, thank you. But I don't remember a single decision that we made on that day that was impacting at least 22% of our ratepayers that was going to have an impact on their day-to-day lives that we're hearing about right now.
Amber?
Of course.
If you look at I have a hard time with that button. Jason's my, anyway, you see the base grant there? Those are Wheatland County libraries. They're the municipal libraries that belong to the county that Amerigo looks after. The other fee is the $15 per card holder, and that's how the formula was derived. Me personally, I believe Wheatland County and everything I do, every decision I make, is part of the community. In a lot of places we are the community. I heard from all the people that talked it here today, and I can remember Rocky Ford's the best because he had a visual aid, and it's easier for me to remember. I believe their budget had about $5,000 and change in people voting with their wallets. 35%. Wheatland County was down at 5%. Our contribution. I'd say that's part of the community. We're not the overriding driver, but we're definitely part of. We fund fire services in the county at considerably more money. What's next? Are we going to charge everybody time we go out for a fire? I heard a gentleman mention toll roads. Is that next? Some services we just provide. Libraries is one of them. Schools is one. Roads is one. Fire services is one. We heard today that there are very few, in fact you can count them on one hand, municipalities that charge for library use in North America. I don't want to be part of that group. I know there is a library in the community that charges a fee. That's their decision. That's their budget. There are other libraries that don't charge a fee. That's their decision. That's their budget. They're making it work. Why would we take away from them because they don't charge a user fee? Why? Or the one that we're charging the user fee, we're gonna give them all the money because they're charging a user fee? That's their budget. This is a grant that they've been given through the CURB money. And it's very, to me, this CURB money was our first kick at the can at helping our communities. And out of that come the CRISP money. Same thing. And since then, we've funded I keep calling it the racetrack, the walking track, the field house at Strathmore. And we put considerable money into the new school, Wheatland Crossing, one-time funding there. Outfit at Strathmore gets a yearly fee for 5 years for maintenance. Those are hugely more costly for not many more or maybe less people using it. I still think we fund it.
Through the chair, something Glenn said before tweaked on me too. I'm not a big library user, I never have been. I don't know anybody in my family that does. I read extensively, but I just don't use the library. But something he said and something Councillor Tom said, Glenn said the money's sitting there, it's been collected, it's been charged to the mill rate, it's sitting in that fund doing nothing. And Tom said that there's no skin in the game. Well, each and every ratepayer in the county is paying that portion of that, whether you're a landowner or a renter. And through your rent, you pay that. You're still paying your landlord for his portion of that assessment. So I don't have a problem revisiting it and reinstating it, and I don't have a problem with Glenn's motion. It's just something I never used.
I want to thank everybody for coming in. As most of you know, I voted against this past motion. No matter what, no matter the amount of money, for me, it can be millions and millions or $5. I have to ask myself a fundamental question that I was raised on, that is it the government's role? And the way I was raised, if it's important to me, I have to find the means to acquire that. And as an individual, if my neighbor can't afford it, it's up to my individual right to help that neighbor out. I don't want to rely on the government. I want the government to have a minimal role in my life. And I know it's very rare, and many of you won't agree with me, but I can't vote against my beliefs, and I apologize, but I can't support the motion.
May I ask you a question? Did you rely on the government to get here today? Or do you take alternate transportation, not using our roads?
I could have drove in the ditch if I wanted to. I understand that. It's the level of service that a government is willing to provide. And I, as a government official, am not willing to provide this.
But what is your rationale to differentiate, say, for Deputy Reeve Kester's example of fire service versus library service, which we've heard the depth and breadth of service that includes? How do you differentiate that? Or transportation, or if you look at any line item on our budget that you in good faith approved? I'm legitimately curious.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I just believe that the fire service is a necessary service that I'm willing to provide. It's a costly one, and this I don't believe is costly enough that I can't introduce some responsibility on the individual.
So I don't look at this as anything different than walking through our parks, playing on our playgrounds, going to our outdoor skating rinks. We don't have user fees for any of those things. And I know some of the names on those petitions I looked at and glanced at. I know they don't use the library. I've asked a few people that do not use the library if they think the library is necessary and if they think that their money should go to them, and they said yes. They absolutely do believe, even the people that don't go to libraries agree that a library is necessary for a community. we have to keep in mind that this isn't our money. This is their money. And this is something that they've said it to me in my division, that this is what they would like. So as majority, it's my job to represent and vote on their behalf. I vote for it.
Further discussion? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the funding as recommended in the RFD for $45,765. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you to everybody for coming today. Sorry, I don't normally get emotional, I'm sorry. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate it. We do have 2 more in-camera agenda items. 3, if we could have a motion to move in camera. Jason's moved, all in favor? Motion is carried.